Welcome to Forever Shelfmates, everybody. I'm Cheryl, and I love books, and I love to talk about the books that I read. And conveniently enough, I'm a librarian, so I have a job where I get to talk about the books that I love to read. I'm here with my co-librarian and BFF, Mirala. Say hi, Mirala.
Hi, Marilla.
Shelfmates, shelfmates, reading books is what we do. Shelfmates, shelfmates, and we talk about them too.
I'm Cheryl. I like light and fluffy.
Meryl, I like dark, stuffy.
Shelfmates, shelfmates, we're so glad that you're here to hear us.
Let's dive in, shall we? This episode, we are discussing The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzi Lee. As a warning before we get started, we will be spoiling the book. So if you haven't read it and don't want to have the plot ruined for you, pause this episode, run out to your favorite local indie bookstore or your public or school library and come back after you read it. Don't worry, we'll wait.
So, Cheryl, this book is one that I have long wished for you to read, and I am very emotionally attached to this book. Therefore, if you criticize it in even the slightest way, I will stop being your BFF.
Wow. But last time when we talked about my favorite book and you were critical, we didn't stop being BFFs then. So, maybe you got to get over it a little bit.
Well, but I'm really attached to this. This is seriously one of my favorite books of all time. It is, let's inform our studio audience what it is about. It is set in the 1700s, and our star is Henry Montague.
AKA Monty.
Yes, his nickname is Monty, and he is a bit of a rake. There, I said it.
Also, he's a bit of a wreck.
He's a rake. He's a
wrecked
rake. He's a rack.
No.
Okay. Well, anyway, he likes to gamble, party, drink, and make out with attractive people of both genders, especially boys. Okay? And his father is highly disapproving of Monty's behavior.
And lifestyle in general.
Exactly, especially since Monty is the heir to his father's estate, and his father expects Monty to settle down and run the estate like an official, boring English nobleman.
Which he definitely is not interested in doing.
He's really not. And it's made worse by the fact that Monty has just gotten kicked out of university because he was making out with a dude. And that was not okay in the 1700s if you were a nobleman.
I don't think it was okay no matter who you were in the 1700s, but it makes for a very interesting story.
It does. And his dad is super, super ticked off. And he says, Monty, I'm sending you on a grand tour of Europe, but it's not going to be a fun grand tour. It's going to be like a tour of reformation. He's going to mold him into the man he has to be an heir of the estate. And he has to go with this really stick in the mud drag of a guy guardian who's following him around and basically like a police officer.
We should probably explain for those who don't know, grand tour is like the 1700s version of like a gap year, where you take some time off and you expand your horizons by going to other countries and, learning stuff. Only Monty is kind of the impression that learning stuff is, let's say, drinking a lot, partying a lot.
He definitely has his own stuff he would like to learn and study more of, and it does not include staring at famous paintings or taking in cultural sites.
I mean, it might be staring at famous people.
Or parts of famous people. Anyway. What? Did I say something wrong?
But all of this is kind of not for naught because his father has hired, as you said, this like stick in the mud
curmudgeonly.
Yeah.
Oh, I forget it. Lockwood. His name is Mr. Lockwood.
Yes, he's the bear leader, which was a term I had never heard before. But that's apparently what they called the guy who was in charge of your, grand tour. And Lockwood has this whole plan where they're going to go to Paris and they're going to learn a lot about Parisian and French culture, and there will be no drinking, and the only parties they can go to are pre-approved parties,
Right. It's everything that Monty hates.
Yeah.
Now, we should add that Monty is not alone on this tour with Lockwood. He is also with his very spirited, equally rebellious sister, Felicity, who is a very outstanding, strong female character. And I should mention the sequel to this book is entirely narrated by Felicity, and I love it also, but not as much as this one. And his best friend, Percy.
Who he's secretly in love with.
He is secretly in love with him, but he hasn't admitted it yet.
Well, he's admitted it to himself quite a bit. And, you know, he's very excited to have this year with Percy because at the end of this, like, gap year grand tour, Percy is heading off to the Netherlands to go to law school. And so they will be apart for the first time in their lives. And so this is sort of like a last hurrah, this, like, bros trip, which, you know, Monty's kind of hoping
will turn into something more. And will it?
Oh, boy.
Well. Anyway, okay.
So after Paris, they're supposed to go to Marseille, which is where they're supposed to drop Felicity off at finishing school, which Felicity is not super excited to attend because she wants to be a doctor and not a lady.
Right.
And then they're supposed to go to Italy, I think.
But things get derailed, of course.
Well, they haven't even left yet.
Well, let's make them leave because we need to hurry up our summary of events.
Wow. Okay, fine. Fine, you speed it up. Go ahead.
No,
they go to Paris.
They go to Paris, and then Monty thoroughly messes everything up. And
well, he, like, does it by sort of being like, I'm not going to listen to Bear Leader Dude. I'm going to still go do whatever I want. And if I have to go to the things that he's going to make me, I'm going to darn well have a good time.
So Monty, without getting into too much detail, because we're about to discuss all the details, right, Cheryl? Yes, Meryl.
Oh, I guess I don't even need to be here for this anymore. You just take over. I'm gonna sit back.
Monty messes everything up. He
messes everything up because he's so streaking across Versailles.
Yes, he does lots. It's the best scene ever. It is laugh out loud. Like if you're drinking milk, it will come out your nose when you are reading that section.
We have to go back to the details of how he ends up streaking across Versailles because it's actually a very important plot point.
Okay.
So he decides that he's going to get back at the bear leader and, like, do what he wants to do. So he, like, wanders off with a lady, and she is a member of the court. Mm-hmm. And so she takes him to a private chamber.
Which is not hers.
And he figures out that it is this, like, stick up your tush, like, duke.
Another stick up your tush. That's
like
two tush stickers.
So she's taken him to the Duke of Bourbon's chambers, and he's like the second in command to the king, but he's sort of fallen out of favor, and Monty had a very not so great interaction with him earlier where the Duke of Bourbon was kind of pretentious and condescending and whatever, and Monty did not care for that. So while he's having a moment with the lady in the room...
Who should come in, but... Knock, knock.
Well, first he steals the thing off the desk. That's the important part. He steals a box because he hates the Duke of Bourbon and just decides to steal something just to annoy him to no end.
Which I think is incredibly juvenile and ridiculous. Who would steal a little thing from someone's room to annoy the other person? I think the whole
Monty.
Right.
Have you not? So at the beginning of the book, like this is a sort of a big deal. Is Monty, like... I did not like Monty at the beginning of the book. I couldn't believe you were having me read this because he was really like a big jerk.
He is, but he's a silly jerk. He's a silly juvenile jerk.
He is, but I just like at the beginning he was so obnoxious that I like could not root for him.
But you're not meant to like him. In the beginning you're not, at least. The whole story is about how he matures into somebody who's like half-baked into a delicious chocolate chip cookie. In the beginning, he's the cookie dough. By the end, he's the cookie. And what a cookie he is.
I knew you were going to say that, but I just, He's a cookie.
He's an attractive cookie.
No.
Even in the end when his ear gets blown off.
Okay, you just jumped ahead like 300 pages.
He's just so sweet and adorable, and he doesn't look anything like the character on the cover of the book.
Okay, so back to the Duke of Bourbon. So he's trying to hook up with the girl and stealing the box, and the Duke of Bourbon bursts in and Monty runs off without his clothing across the gardens at Versailles, and that's how he streaks. So
Right,
that's
during a
back
party.
to the important discussion of streaking, which is super awesome.
Yeah, and it's very funny. And again, if you're reading that section and drinking any sort of beverage, be forewarned the beverage will come out of your nose because it's really well written and it's very funny.
Well, so after this, they, Monty's made kind of a fool of himself. Yeah, he's made a fool of himself. And so they leave Paris and decide to go to Marseille early. And that's where everything falls completely apart.
Yes, they encounter pirates.
No, it's highwaymen first.
Oh, they're highwaymen.
They also encounter pirates, but that's later.
Right.
Pirates are later. So the carriage gets attacked by highwaymen.
And they get abandoned, and they
Yes.
don't have any money or food, and they need to figure out, and Lockwood is...
Missing.
They get separated from him, and so they have to decide what they're going to do. So
They walk.
they walk, and they
get to Marseille, and in Marseille, they sort of discover that the box is what the highwaymen were looking for, because they run into the highwaymen in Marseille. And so they look around for somebody who can tell them what the heck this box is that he stole from the Duke of Bourbon, because he didn't even realize it was a thing.
So the box, it turns out, belongs to somebody named Mateo Robles, and they decide that they are going to return the box to Mateo Robles.
Who lives in Barcelona.
Right. And when they get to his house, which is a really creepy house, by the way, the description, it's very unsettling.
As somebody who's been to Barcelona, it filled me with such joy that, I imagined, the neighborhood which the Robleses lived in, and I was just like, oh, I wish I could go to Barcelona
Yeah,
again.
but not to the Robles' house, which is full of skulls and potions and creepy Helena, who's this,
So when they show up at Mateo Robles' house, his daughter and his son are there, but there's no Mateo. And so they invite him in. They tell him that Mateo has died and they are his children, and they should definitely give them the box because it's super important
And
for them, for their memories of their dead dad.
which they're about to, but the whole reason why they decided to go to return the box, I think we should have mentioned this earlier, is that Mateo Robles specialized in alchemical cures. And Monty is very much hoping that...
Okay, we forgot to mention stuff about Percy before. We're
did.
getting far too into the details, I think.
I really agree with you. All right. Let's talk tachlis. You know that expression?
I do not know that expression.
Okay.
What is tachlis?
Tachlis. It's
Unless it means taco-less, which I'm currently
it's
without tacos.
let's talk about the main subject here. Let's get to the point. And the point is, this is a rollicking, silly romp. This book is just full of joy and laughter and hysterical characters, okay?
So why did you
It's
like it?
wickedly funny. Monty is such a rake. He's scandalous. I mean, I just fell in love with him. You didn't like him in the beginning. I mean, I think he's a jerk, but I fell in love with him in the beginning anyway because he's just so devil-may-care, right? And he's handsome. We all know this. So I think the humor in this book, running naked through Versailles, the barbs that he and Felicity are trading all the time, that whole sibling rivalry, they're so funny. It's just wicked fun. I used wicked in the last podcast episode, but it's
You're from Boston, it's fine.
It's wickedly funny. Did you not think it was wickedly funny? It's wicked funny.
No, but you don't like
What do you mean I don't like funny things? Who doesn't like
you
funny?
like dark stuffy. It's in the theme song. So why did you like this book?
I liked it when I thought it was moving, especially when I didn't actually like the description of the father abusing Monty. The whole point of this, I do like dark stuffy. However, we agreed that for our first book, you were going to choose something you thought I would like, and I was going to choose something that I thought you would like.
Oh, that's fair.
And you did enjoy it. Did you not? Or did you really give it 3.5 stars on Goodreads? Was that to throw me off the trail? You didn't like this, did you, Cheryl?
Wow, I feel very put on the spot right now. I did like it. It was a very cute read. I enjoyed it.
What did you love about this book?
I loved some of the things that you mentioned, the witty repartee, it was great banter. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the road trip aspect, especially given the fact that I haven't been to Europe in at least 2 years, and it's making me nuts. And so hearing all the descriptions of the different places they go was delightful. I'm very much into historicals, and so like I loved all of that part of it. But what I didn't like, and this is part of it, was listening to it on audio. So I listened to it on audio and I read the print version. And when I was reading the print version, it's written in first person present. And that drives me nuts sometimes.
What do you mean?
So he's telling the story of what's happening to him as it's happening to him.
So what?
I don't love when you're in somebody's head for that long.
But you didn't tell me that before. If you told me that before, I wouldn't have suggested this book to you.
Okay, but like it's not a big deal, but it was when I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, I was skimming and I was like, this is very bad. So then I dedicated myself to listening to the audiobook. But the problem I had with the audiobook was that the reader didn't do voices in a way that really worked for me. At the very beginning, I couldn't tell the difference between Monty's voice and Percy's voice.
I remember you told me that. And
it was very confusing because the author in the book itself did not write Percy said or Monty said. And so I never knew who was talking, and it was very confusing at the beginning. Once we got into it more, the reader did different accents, which I really appreciated because I loved the French accent, I loved the Spanish accent, I loved when they went to Italy, the Italian accent.
I didn't have that confusion. I didn't have the same confusion as you about the voices.
Which is fine because they're different. You know, everybody has a different
ears.
Everybody has different ears. Yes,
right.
That is true. Everybody does have different ears.
And my ears are more dainty than yours.
And so that was one of the problems I had, is that it was just very difficult to follow sometimes. And so I wish that the narrator had done a better job distinguishing between the voices, especially with Monty and Percy. When he did a female voice, it was a little easier to tell the difference. And once the accents came into play, it was a lot easier to tell them apart. But just at the very beginning, that really bothered me. And I had it, which is why I picked up the print book. And then I struggled to read that too. So it was a little bit of a challenge.
And you struggled to read it because you didn't like the first person.
I did not.
Okay,
but
is there
also
anything
because
else?
I didn't like Monty. Monty was, as we've said, kind of a jerk.
He's a rake, but don't you love the bad boys?
I didn't love this bad boy because his bad boyness was like just destructive. It wasn't
attractive.
It wasn't attractive, but it also didn't seem to get him anywhere.
Right. Self-destructive.
It was self-destructive to the point where it had me thinking, why is he doing this?
So you didn't think it was believable?
It's not that it wasn't believable, because I can definitely imagine, we work with teens. You know? We work with teens, and teens are amazing, and I have a younger brother that I watched go through his teen years, and sure enough, like, they do things that sometimes are like head-scratching, right? To adult people.
Right.
But it just, and until you figure out that his father has been abusing him, and so a lot of this is because he's dealing with an abusive relationship that he needs to get out of, it doesn't make sense why he's so self-destructive. Like, he does everything in his power to make his life awful. Mm-hmm. He gets kicked out of school. He just, like, when they're on the trip, he does everything that Lockwood tells him not to do. He just seems to always do the opposite of what's expected, but not because he has a sincere interest in doing anything productive. He's just being destructive for the sake of being destructive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like just being oppositionally defiant. Like it's as though he has oppositional defiant disorder, or just like he's a rebel. He's a rebel. I knew that there was some
cause, you know.
With a cause, I knew there was.
His cause is, you know, figuring out how to get his best friend to fall in love with him.
Right, and let's talk about his best friend for a little bit.
Percy.
Because
I did love Percy from the beginning.
And their romance is really adorable. You can't help but enjoy how it develops. Percy is intellectual. He is kind-hearted, he's compassionate, and he's frustrated because Monty doesn't understand what it means to be a person of color in Europe in the 1700s.
Probably should have started with the fact that Percy is biracial.
Mm-hmm.
He's being raised by an aunt and uncle who have insisted that he go to law school at the end of the Grand Tour. But that's kind of code because, as we find out along the way, Percy is suffering from epilepsy. And back in the 1700s, they didn't have even the slightest understanding of what epilepsy is and how to treat it. And there really was no treatment for it. And so he's not really going to law school. He is going to an asylum where he's going to live the rest of his life away from everybody because people with epilepsy can't mix with the general population, which we all know is not true.
Bull honky.
But this is the 1700s, and their knowledge of medicine is, let me bleed you with leeches. I mean, who thought that was a good idea? You think bleeding people with leeches is a good idea?
So Monty is very distraught about Percy being put away, and so he tries to take their relationship forward, really.
Well, and that's part of the reason they go to Mateo Robles is that the idea that he may have a cure-all for any disease, which, by the way, not exactly something that is legitimate in science.
Okay, that's where it got, my only criticism of the book is that point where it got a little weird with the genres, because until that point, it's a great historical fiction, we're doing fine, and then all of a sudden there's this strange supernatural element that's thrown in with the alchemical heart. I found it a little bit confusing how the person with the alchemical heart could be not totally dead, but also not totally alive. And if you actually
have to eat the heart.
You have to eat the heart. Oh my God. Okay. Do you know the most disturbing part of this whole book was when they had to remove the heart? That description, that was disgusting.
That was gross.
It was just, you
100%
will not forget reading that section.
That's one of those times where I wish I could skim the audiobook.
Yeah, don't you wish we never read that? I wish we never read it.
I don't wish we never read it because there are definitely far grosser things that I've read.
Have you read grosser things than that?
When I have you read Stalking Jack the Ripper by
I read that already.
There's some gruesome stuff.
Well, I read that already.
You did? Okay,
yes, you made me read it. Don't make me read it again.
Dang it. Okay, well that narrows down my
Good. All right.
We're in Barcelona with Mateo Robles, who's been arrested by the Duke of Bourbon. Bourbon.
Oh my God.
Bourbon.
If we can't agree on this.
Bourbon, actually.
Bourbon.
If we're speaking in actual French, Bourbon.
All right. They are trying to get
to the alchemical heart.
Right.
Which, although not legitimate medical science, they think will cure Percy of his epilepsy. Spoilers, it will not. The alchemical heart will not cure Percy of his epilepsy.
And the Duke of Bourbon, does he not, break into the house? They have to run away.
So they go, so if I recall correctly, they come up with this plan to get Monty arrested so that he gets taken to the same jail that Mateo Robles is in, so Mateo Robles can tell him what the secret code is to get inside the box.
And it actually works.
Yeah.
Monty pretends that he's stealing potatoes.
Well, he is stealing potatoes.
He does steal potatoes, but he might not have gone to jail for just that, but he acts like an
entitled jerk.
Yeah, so he finds Mateo Robles in the jail, and lo and behold, convinces Mateo Robles that it is in Robles' interests to give him the cipher. Robles gives him the cipher so that they can open the box. As soon as they get home...
In the box is a key, and there's a key to a door.
Right.
And the door leads to somewhere where the alchemical heart is located.
Beat it.
Exactly.
And a key, and
Thank
the heart,
you.
and a heart, and a drawer, and the... Cadaver blooms all around, the cadaver blooms all around.
The cadaver blooms all around?
So, but as soon as they get back, they decide they have to flee with the box and...
The key. They have to take the key
to take
Venice to get the alchemical heart from the place that it is buried. And this is where it gets... If it isn't crazy enough and farcical enough, it now is going to get worse. Or better, depending on your interpretation.
It gets very fantasy-like. They open the box. They take the key. They go to the island. They find the crypt. They go down the stairs. They find...
You've like missed a whole part of this.
Okay.
You missed the pirates.
The pirates come.
No,
The
Mirla.
pirates...
Mirla, you clearly have forgotten the plot of this book. Okay,
I don't remember.
so I'm just going to do this because
Just do
clearly you don't remember.
Do it.
So they flee Barcelona on a ship, and the ship is taken by pirates. And they are stowing away on the ship because they did not have the money to pay for a ticket, and so they get captured by the pirates. And then the pirates are not really pirates. They're former privateers that are now sort of pirates. And if you don't know the difference between privateers and pirates, well, there's not much of a difference, except that one is legal pirating and the other is illegal pirating.
Okay, then what?
So then they are captured by the pirates, and they somehow convince the pirates to take them to Venice so they can save the alchemical heart, thereby saving Percy from his lifelong battle with epilepsy and staying out of the, asylum that his family is committing him to at the end of this year. And so they go to Venice, and guess who's waiting for them in Venice is the Duke of Bourbon. And he wants the heart.
The Duke of Bourbon.
The Duke of Bourbon.
The Duke of Bourbon.
Good Lord.
Okay, then can I do the next part?
Fine.
Then they take the key. They open the box. No,
they've already opened the box.
Then
they open the
box.
door.
No, stop. They open
because
the box.
The island is sinking.
They take out the key.
Oh, good Lord.
They go to the island. They put the key in the door. They open the door to the crypt. In the crypt is another door. They open that door, and inside is a body. And then the Duke of Bourbon, who's forcing them to do this, we missed that part,
We missed a lot of parts.
Okay, well, he's really, really nasty, and he says, you need to cut open your mama with this knife and take out the heart.
I would like to reiterate that is gross, and also that we haven't mentioned that it is actually the mother of one of the people present in the crypt, because the daughter of Mateo Robles is there, and Mateo Robles did this to his wife.
Yes.
Turned her into a alchemical heart person. I don't even know what you would call it. It's not
specimen.
A cadaver.
She's a specimen because she's half alive and half dead, and that's where it gets kind of confusing. Can you imagine that if... Well, never mind. We won't go into it. But the point is, it's really,
no, you should go into it. Now I want to know.
It's just really mean to take someone, and hold them at gunpoint and say, you need to open the grave of your mother who is half alive and half dead, and then you need to cut her open with a knife and take out her heart. Like, that's mean.
Well, yes, it is in fact mean.
It's really mean. It's another layer of cruelty.
Here's the dark stuffy. I was wondering where in the book the dark stuffy was, because this book is just like a big like historical rom-com romp through Europe in the 1700s, and I'm like, where is the dark stuffy? Well, we just hit on the dark stuffy.
Ding, ding, ding.
And that is cutting out the cadaver's heart.
And that is forcing the daughter to cut out her own mother's heart.
That's horrible.
It's horrible.
Well, and then, here's the spoiler, the end spoiler is that nobody gets the alchemical heart because she throws it in the fire.
Isn't that a fitting ending? And it explodes into a million fiery pieces.
I mean, let's be real. The science behind the alchemical heart was never that solid, and I don't think it was going to do anything that anybody thought it was going to do.
Right. It wasn't clear to me what they would have done with it. Even when she was holding it, I couldn't believe she actually is holding it and it's still beating. What are they going to do? Go to Venice with it in a jar and run to a doctor and say, do something with this? Nobody would know what to do with it.
So after they deal with the heart, and the heart has been destroyed, everyone kind of runs along because now nobody cares because nobody has the heart. So the Duke of Bourbon cannot bring it back to the French king to heal him.
Dead, right? Because he sank. He sank.
No, I thought they all escaped.
The island. Doesn't he sank with the island? He's trying to get the heart.
Yeah. And the island is sinking.
And it's sinking. And
which
I
is
think
why
he goes
there's
under.
a rush.
It's not clear what happens to him. It appears that he might sink or he just I don't know. Maybe he's marooned somewhere, but he's no more. And then Monty and
Whatever.
Percy are free to
Well, that's
on
when
the
they,
beach.
but that's when they announce that they are in fact completely head over heels. Take that again. That is the time when they announce that they are just head over heels in love with each other. They have been this whole time, and these two idiots couldn't figure it out sooner. And now they want to walk off into the sunset on a beautiful island in Greece.
And they're walking on the beach.
And
Let's
it's
not
just
forget.
amazing.
It is amazing. The best part is when they walk together hand in hand on the beach and they kiss. And then that was the part I thought you would enjoy. Cheryl, did you enjoy that part?
I'm going to be honest. I enjoyed this book.
Oh!
I liked it.
I win!
I
win!
very much enjoyed it. The last part of the book, when they stick it to the father, though, that was the best part. So the very end of the book is a letter that that Monty writes to his father, basically being like, screw you, I'm never coming back. Have a nice life.
Right.
And I know all your dirty secrets.
Right.
Love
exactly.
your son.
Love Henry Montague.
And that's
yes.
the end of the book. And I really enjoyed it. The banter was delightful. The characters were really great, except for Monty at the beginning, who was really kind of annoying. Actually, Monty was my least favorite character of the entire book.
He's my favorite. He's such a rascal. He's such a rake.
He's not really a rake. He's kind of an immature brat who doesn't know how to stand up for himself. And also, he's a traumatized child growing up. And so once you sort of realize about all of his trauma, you sort of feel bad for him. And so I was better able to understand his character, but I still didn't like him very much. And I find this is hard, and I think we talked about this, is that when it's first person present and you're in their head so much, sometimes it's really hard for me to like care. I just don't care. Stop thinking all these annoying thoughts, Monty, and like get on with it. Stop thinking, why doesn't Percy like me? Well, if you said something to Percy, maybe you'd find out. It got on my nerves, but in the end, I came to appreciate him. I loved Percy. I loved Felicity.
Felicity is a very strong character, and the sequel is in her voice.
I've been waiting to listen to the sequel until after we finished talking about this because I didn't want to confuse the books. And actually, there is a third one.
There is a third.
And I'm excited to listen to that one too.
Okay.
But yes, and then after the end of the book, there's the author's note, there's the historical note, and it's actually fascinating to read because it talks about some of the issues that pop up in the book, including what racism was like in the 1700s.
Bad.
Obviously. England was a colonial power. Percy is biracial.
And the captain of the
privateer.
The
yes. Pirate.
You see the racism issue with the captain of the pirates when he gets pulled over, right, by
the French police. They pulled him over and boarded.
And they question him. And Monty, who is at that point his prisoner, because Monty is white, he thinks that he decides to he takes it upon himself to, quote unquote, save the captain of the ship from arrest by the French police. And since Monty is white, he thinks that he will be able to pose as the captain, and he does. But what's really infuriating about all of this, even though they are let off free, afterwards Monty seems to expect that the captain of his pirate ship would be grateful to him for saving him with his white skin and all, and is shocked and disappointed and hurt, doesn't understand why the captain is so ticked off that he had to be saved by his own white prisoner. Percy needs to fill him in on that point. Percy is often filling Monty in on issues of race.
Which is interesting given that Monty and Percy have been friends for so long, that Monty isn't at least aware of some of the stuff going on around him, which is probably one of the reasons I didn't really love him in the beginning, is that he's kind of oblivious. He's very selfish, very self-centered, and doesn't really see any of the things going on, just generally speaking, around him, including that his friend is biracial and therefore doesn't have the same opportunities that he has. And there are comments made about Percy, and they just sort of go right over Monty's head. And Percy's just sort of like, this is the way life is for me.
Right.
as a biracial British. I don't think he's a gentleman. He's just not titled.
Right.
So
there was some truth in this historical fantasy, shall we say.
well, and then there's also the sexism that was prominent in the book too, because Felicity's greatest desire is to become a doctor. We haven't even gotten to the homophobia yet. That's how come Monty gets kicked out of school. He gets caught kissing another boy, and they kick him out of school. And then his father beats him and basically tells him that he may not, under any circumstances, kiss any more boys, that he needs to find a wife. And after this tour, that's it. He will find a wife, and he will manage the estate and whatever, and no more of this kissing boys thing. And
all the more reason that Monty is desperate to run away with Percy.
And also kind of hates himself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, part of the reason he is so selfish and self-centered and lashes out and does all these crazy things is because he can't be who he is.
And he doesn't see his inner worth. Percy helps him see that at the end. Or no, that's the captain. Remember at the end when the captain is saying, do you really think that you're such a terrible human being? Don't you see the good parts of you? There's a very touching scene where that happens. It's a little bit Disney, but I liked it.
So sexism.
There's a lot of sexism.
Yeah, Felicity wants to be a doctor, and she's basically told by her parents, tough, you're going to finishing school. So she learned how to throw a party, how to manage household finances, how to instruct servants on what to do.
Yeah.
This wasn't let me teach you actual skills.
Oh, okay. Well, it also sounds like fun, but she wasn't into it.
No, she wanted to be a doctor, and in fact, when they were in Paris, and the bear leader was taking Percy and Monty to all of these lectures that the two gentlemen had no interest in attending and would skip out on every time they possibly could, Felicity was sneaking into those lectures because she wasn't allowed to go and learn, and she really wanted to. And the idea that her only value was to become the wife of someone,
Yeah.
that's barf. Talk about barf. That's barf.
And she is so kick butt. The best part is when she has to she sews up her own gaping wound with stitches.
Yeah, she does. Because she wants to be a doctor, and she studied anatomy,
And she just does it. And the boys are passing out around her, and she just.
And it's delightful at the end that the pirates basically offer her a job as their boat doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that they are able to see past what women are supposed to be, to say you have value and you will be a valued member of our crew.
Well, but,
because back then women didn't do that.
But also the pirates were experiencing racism, so they knew what it was like to be devalued. And maybe that's part of why they were able to see the value of Felicity as a woman.
Fair enough. So this book, being a delightful rom-com romp, dealt with some serious issues. The representation in this book is quite good, I think. It had a great cross-section of different populations, minorities.
Yes. Monty is bisexual. He's not gay. He's bisexual, which is interesting.
I believe Percy is also. It's never explicitly mentioned because Percy doesn't. It's clear that Monty is attracted to both men and women, and Percy seems to only be interested in Monty the whole time.
Right.
So I'm not 100% sure what Percy identifies as. And Felicity seems kind of asexual in a way. She kisses somebody along the way and is sort of ew.
No.
I don't think I enjoy that.
But she kisses him in order to try to get information out of him.
Yes. And so she doesn't seem to really... She says along in the book that she's never been interested in a man or a woman before.
Right.
And she doesn't find kissing to be all that great.
They ask her, Monty says, well, how was the kiss? And she says, wet.
Yeah. So...
What a dry sort of observation.
So what else do we want to say about this book? I talked about most of the things I wanted to.
I talked about what I wanted to say. I find Monty an attractive character.
Well, this was a really good recommendation. I'm really glad I read it. I got this book a while ago, and it was recommended to me because I love the book My Lady Jane.
Yes.
And it's sort of a similar genre, not genre.
Similar tone.
It's similar. Yes, it's similar in tone. It's also historical, but with a little bit of fantastical elements in it. And it's sort of kind of marketed as, if you like My Lady Jane, you'll like The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. But I loved My Lady Jane, loved that book. And my problem is usually when books that are, if you like this one, you'll like this other one. I never like the other one as much.
Interesting.
And so I was really worried. And so that's why I sort of was reticent about trying to read this one, is because I had started and then like, oh, it's not as good as My Lady Jane. I don't want to do this. And I put it away and I said, I'm not going to read it. And now we're like 5 years later, and I finally read it and
you like
enjoyed it.
Not
I did
as
enjoy
much
it.
as My Lady Jane, but it should be noted I like this more than My Lady Jane, so that's interesting.
Maybe My Lady Jane will have to be one we discuss.
We could.
I love that book so much. Oh, heart. If we've inspired you to read this book, or you've read it before and you have some thoughts or opinions you'd like to share with us, please reach out at our Instagram at @4EverShelfmates. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for listening. Forever Shelfmates is produced in collaboration with an incredible team. Our logo was designed by Mirla Casus and Miriam Goldau. Our theme song was written by Mirla Casus and Noah Osofsky and was performed by Abby Chessman. Our producer is Aaron Adams, Benevolent Overlord, and our show is hosted by Mirla Casus and me, Cheryl Fox Strasberg. That's all the time we have for you this time. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Forever Shelfmates. That's the number 4, Ever Shelfmates, for the most up-to-date news on production. Next time, we'll be reading Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. Thank you for listening.